From places that I call home that aren't home, or favorite travel memories, things that are always in my luggage, people that I've met along the road, and my travel mantra, and so much more. In today's podcast episode, you're going to be learning a lot about me. And if you're new here, yo, I'm Christine Lozada, and this is Everyday Badassery, a traveling podcast meant to inspire you to be just 1% more badass today than you were yesterday. I had the opportunity to be asked to do an interview for a traveler I really respect, Charles McCool, for his website. And I said, yo, I want to turn this into a YouTube video and a podcast for my channel. And so if you're watching this, there's going to be a ton of fun visuals, but get ready to learn a whole lot about my travel mindset, as well as kind of the badass way I have approached living my life and some of the choices I've made. My hometown, I'm from San Diego, California. I was born and raised there, and my parents actually live in the same house that I grew up in. I will admit, from a travel perspective, growing up in San Diego kind of made me jaded toward beaches around the world. Here's an example. San Diego weather is amazing year-round. The beaches are beautiful. And when I wasn't vacationing within my hometown, my parents would take me to Hawaii. And so I grew up with these two very beautiful places. So when it came to, oh, let's explore the world, like that was my benchmark. So I will admit I was super spoiled. But here's one thing a lot of people don't know, is that my parents are actually immigrants from the Philippines. And so like many Filipinos, my grandfathers were in the Navy. And so there's a huge naval base in San Diego, which is how they came eventually to San Diego and how my parents came to meet. So my hometown, sunny San Diego, California. Ooh, and if I could add a helpful travel tip around San Diego, if you've never been before, one thing you cannot miss is going to La Jolla. La Jolla is stunning because it has the cliffs, it has the stunning views, it's got the seals, it's got the aquarium. I'll link my travel video for that in the show notes of this, but La Jolla is a must visit if you haven't been. What's always in my luggage when I'm traveling? I think you might learn a little bit about me, and it might be some things that you might not expect. And actually the first one you will definitely expect, and it's my drone. I never travel without my drone, or drones plural. I have 4 now. I used to have 5. I gave 1 away in a contest, which was super fun. But for me, exploring the world is all about, because I chase an endless summer beach vacation, it's all about land, sea, and sky. And so it's exploring these beach locations, it's exploring it from scuba diving, and it's also exploring it from the sky with my drones. It's why I'm so obsessed with flying drones. It's about exploration for me and truly enjoying the places that I'm traveling to. And there's so many things you cannot discover unless you have a drone. I mean, if you're watching this on YouTube, you'll see a lot of the sharks that I like to look at with my drone, but it's such an amazing way to explore the world. This next thing that's in my luggage might surprise you. It's a lacrosse ball, and it's not for the reasons you would think. I'm actually really bad at, I don't know if you say throwing a lacrosse ball or playing with a lacrosse ball. I don't know. Meatball used to play lacrosse, so he recently took me out and taught me how to throw a lacrosse ball around. I'm not very good at it, but it is very fun. But I bring a lacrosse ball because it's more from a health and fitness perspective. It's one of the best ways if you put the lacrosse ball against the wall and you lean against it, especially if you're, I don't know, sitting in bed in your hotel room while, catching up with your social media and responding to DMs, etc. It's my favorite way to work out the kinks in my back and in my neck, or anywhere on your body. You can, work out your quads by, laying on top of the lacrosse ball. There's so many things you can do with it. But here's something a lot of people don't know about me, which is I used to teach fitness classes. I'm talking kickboxing, spin, yoga, core classes. I used to teach hot hula, which is sexy hula dancing. This was a lifetime ago, but I used to do that for over 20 years. And I also used to teach nutrition classes at UC Berkeley when I was a student there. And so in general, I care a lot about health and fitness. And every time I travel, I try to incorporate some kind of way of working out. Whether it's, so many people have seen me scuba diving or riding a bike and adventuring on a bike, or doing things like, I don't know, just going for a run or a hike. I love doing all things fitness, and a lacrosse ball to work out all the kinks is always in my luggage. This next item in my luggage is a result of, aside from this past year, which was a lot of travel conferences and being with a lot of other really amazing travelers, is 90% of my travel is normally alone. And so I feel like I have a long distance relationship with Meatball. So I keep a printed photo of he and I. It's a fun photo booth photo. He's a DJ with an entertainment company. So aside from him going out and DJing events and having other DJs that work for him DJing events, he also has photo booths. So it's a photo booth picture taken in one of his photo booths, which is kind of funny. And the last thing I always bring, maybe this list is expected, is a champagne cork. My MO in life is live a life you want to celebrate every day. And what accompanies that mindset is a lifestyle of drinking a lot of champagne. I literally drink champagne almost every single day. And so when I'm traveling, I have my champagne cork with me because, sometimes when you open the good stuff, you don't have to rush to finish it. Anyway, you get the point. My 3 favorite home away from home places. This next part might blow your mind. Most people get very confused when I share this with them. I haven't spent more than 3 weeks in one place in over 7 years. In other words, I'm a nonstop traveler, but the other thing about it is I call a lot of places home. So for a good period of time, this is not a positive thing. I was paying San Francisco taxes. I had all of my mail sent to San Diego. I started a business in Florida where I keep a boyfriend and I keep a car. And so my life, and I also have a Google Sheet. And on this Google Sheet, it explains what items I own and where they are located. Because I also used to pop around I used to live in Michigan for 1 week a month for 7 years. I also used to spend a lot of time in Chicago. I would spend winters in Utah. I had keys to multiple places in San Francisco where I would stay. My life is a little bit odd and complicated, but not that I own a million things, but it's like, where are my snow boots located at? Where do I have my scuba gear at? This Google spreadsheet would help me to remember where things were located. Although one time, this is funny, I flew back to San Francisco because I thought I had a luggage of things there, and I went and looked for it and it wasn't there. Anyway, that trip was what started this whole Google Sheet thing because I was like, I can't fly somewhere to go grab something if it's not actually there. But the question is, what are my 3 favorite home away from home places? And I definitely have 3 places that I love to call home. One is, and a lot of people know I am obsessed with manatees. I freaking love manatees. There's these gentle sea cows that paddle around with their little fins or flippers or whatever the heck you call them. They're just so sweet looking. And they eat grass and I don't know, it makes me feel pretty solid about my own summer body. But manatees are amazing. And Crystal River, Florida is one of my favorite places to travel to. So many videos about it. Check the show notes for the full playlist. But Crystal River is amazing because it's such a quiet, easy place to travel to that is relatively insanely inexpensive. And it's full of manatees, and fresh seafood. So you go there, you swim with the manatees, you enjoy this very logistically easy and very inexpensive trip and just enjoy nature. It's so awesome traveling there. The next one is San Diego, California, which I guess I still call my actual home. But I always love to go there and visit my family and spend time at the beach and fly my drone. And there's so many good hikes to do there. And I guess my newest obsession, because my sister is very obsessed with this, is playing pickleball. So I've been playing a lot of pickleball every time I go back. I'm not very good though. And my last home away from home would be New York City. I love New York City. And this is one that kind of sheds a little bit of insight on who I am, how I travel, and how I've made big jumps in my life. And so I always knew I wanted to live in New York City. And so there was a moment in which I was so happily settled in San Francisco. I mean, I had all my friends around. I had an amazing apartment that I lived in with my best friend. I had my Mini Cooper. I had my fitness classes. I had an awesome job working for Walmart.com in South San Francisco. I was moving up in my career and just things were awesome. And I realized if I did not cut right now this lifestyle off, I would never stop living in San Francisco, and I would spend the rest of my life wondering about what it was like to live in New York City. I would probably meet somebody, I did, in San Francisco, get married, I did, in San Francisco. And I would wake up one day happily living somewhere in the city in my 50s with my kids around me, realizing I never did New York City. And I knew that that would make me feel unsettled. And I also knew I didn't want to live in New York City when I was retired. And so I made a decision after going to, actually it was a women empowerment conference. And at that conference, I found the courage to be like, this needs to happen now. And I slept on it one night right after that conference. And the next morning I woke up and I put in my 2-week notice at work. I put in my notice for my apartment, and I literally grabbed everything inside and just put it on the sidewalk and put up a Craigslist ad letting them know that there was tons of amazing free things on the sidewalk, which was, gone basically instantaneously. And I went and traveled the world for 4 months in Asia. And then I went to New York with 4 boxes, a bicycle, and no friends, no apartment, no job, and the greatest adventure of my entire life. But that's another way of saying it is a city I love. And even though I have left, I spent 4 years there, a piece of my heart will always be in that city. This next question is favorite travel memories, which I have way too many of those to talk about. So I'll just focus on 2 super recent ones. One is having the opportunity to bike across Ethiopia and camp and be in places where tourists have never been before. So that means the villagers who've never seen a face that looks like this would walk down to the campsite and just touch my tent because they've never felt that material before. It was a wild experience. It was a week long of biking on, to be totally honest, pretty treacherous. I don't even call them roads, just places. And a lot of times it would just be so hot. So I'm drinking a lot of water. And if you have to go to the bathroom, there's oftentimes nowhere to go behind. You just sit down next to your bike. And I mean, these donkeys and these farmers with their donkeys carrying the hay, that was their primary thing. They would gather the hay all day long, the children included. And then they would take the long journey to the nearby towns and sell the hay. And so they would be walking by with their, 10, 15 donkeys. And I'm just squatting behind my bike going pee. It was really, actually I got used to it at the end, if I'm honest. But that trip was hot, was challenging and difficult with the bike rides. It constantly smelled like donkey poo everywhere, including in my tent at night. And it was also at times unsettling. I mean, I would be in my tent, there would be like 30, 45 mile per hour winds at night, and there would be hyenas just laughing and walking around the campsite. And if you needed to use the restroom in the middle of the night, I mean, as a woman trying to squat outside your tent in that kind of wind and knowing that there are hyenas around, it was at times very, very uncomfortable. But I made full vlog videos about that experience, so you can check that in the show notes below. This next travel memory kind of sums up my love for beach travel, land, sea, and sky. Although I guess this one was really just sea, and sky, because the adventure was living on a yacht in the Maldives and flying drones. I almost never went on land. It was very rare. The only times that we were going on land, actually 2 occasions. One was to drop off cameras. So we would oftentimes leave cameras on nearby islands where totally uninhabited islands to shoot the stars overnight and then pick them up in the morning. Or we would go to nearby islands to go educate the Maldivian children about manta rays. So you're probably like, what the heck is this trip? I had the opportunity to go with One Blue Ocean, an ocean nonprofit that I'm on the creator team for, and also Manta Trust. So the researchers that research manta rays around the world. And we were on this yacht to on one side, create beautiful ocean content, both above and below the water. And on the other side, study the manta rays. And so we were taking this yacht to parts of the Maldives people have never been to before. And so a typical day would be, I wake up at sunrise, send drones, set up cameras on the boat, and then send drones to capture the sunrise. And then it would be first dive, and we would dive up to 4 times a day, which is a lot of scuba diving. And if you are a diver, diving in the Maldives is a completely different experience. It's not your beautiful, well-lit, shallow dives with, Little Mermaid under the sea. It is high waves, high wind. There were times where I would do the big step off the dive boat and the boat would hit a wave and I would just crash into the side of the boat and then fall into the water. There is footage of that. I will try to find it and incorporate it into the YouTube version of this. But we would be in parts of the Maldives where the ocean is treacherous. And I mean, if you've ever been scuba diving in current before, the currents in the Maldives are insane, to the point where if you're not sticking super close with your dive group, you could be swept all of a sudden, half a mile away, and there you go. And now you got to blow up your safety sausage, which if you don't know what that is, it's basically like this balloon that allows you to stay underwater, but is a marker for the dive boat to be able to find you, if they find you. And it's like a neon color. And so in theory, that's your way of getting found. And so these dives were, I don't want to call them technical, but they were not easy dives. And a lot of times we would use reef hooks, where we would go down to an area where we knew there would be manta rays and we would wait for them. But it's very difficult to just swim and wait with the current, because you would, as you're swimming, you'll use more of your oxygen, and we would be down there for a full tank, like not normal scuba diving where it's like, come up with an adequate amount of bar left in your tank. Like, no, we would be down there until like 0. And so you need to conserve your tank. And so a reef hook, you would take this hook and you would, it's attached to your BCD, which is what is around your body. And then you would hook it onto a rock, and you would just float basically, while the current was just ripping around you, and you would just wait. So a lot of people would imagine like, oh, beautiful, warm Maldivian waters. No, since you're not moving, and since you're very deep sometimes, it's freezing. I'm like shivering, like teeth shivering, and my teeth are chattering, and I'm just so uncomfortable and cold. And the other thing is, people would think, oh, beautiful, like the water, you must have amazing visibility. No, like you could barely see anything. And the less you could see, the better. And you're like, wait, why is that? And that's because when it comes to manta rays, the times in which you see them is generally around when they're feeding. And what do manta rays eat? Most people think that they are these dangerous creatures that, will attack people. Like their only way of protecting themselves is to swim away. And what they eat is plankton. And so when they're eating plankton, what happens in the water is it looks soupy. When there's a lot of plankton in the water, it's hard to have good visibility because there's so much plankton, and they just open their mouths really, really, really wide. It's like the funniest thing to see. And they will just stay there, and the current they'll stay in one place, and the current will just push all of the plankton into their mouths, and that's how they feed. And so we would wait for them to come to the feeding sites, and then we would do the research, whether the research is taking photos of them or doing ultrasounds on them to learn more about their pregnancies. Oh, it was so cool. Anyway, all that to say, favorite travel memory, being in the Maldives, flying drones, and being able to scuba dive with these amazing, beautiful manta rays. And I would say my most favorite ridiculous memory within that is, even though we were on this humongous yacht, when it was my job to go set up cameras, and I would probably be up at like five something every morning to go put the cameras out. I learned this the hard way. I slipped so badly on a squid. So what happens is, even though this yacht is humongous, squid can jump like dozens of feet when they're being attacked. And so a lot of times there would be squid that were being attacked near the boat. And so they would jump out of the water and accidentally land on the boat. And one of the mornings, I was literally sprinting out of my room to go set up the camera, and I slipped on a squid. And I can't believe I didn't fall overboard, which if I did, I probably would not be here making this podcast episode right now. But that slipping on the squid was probably one of my most ridiculous moments. And when I put it on social media, everyone thought it was dog poo. And it's like, well, come on, guys, think about it. How is there a dog on board? or on a live-aboard yacht? I digress. Okay, next question. My 3 favorite travel brands. I would say my first one would be Waypoint Goods. I love Caitlin. She creates these beautiful infinity scarves. And what's clever is that it has a little secret pocket in it. Whether you're putting, your valuables, your money, your passport, your micro SD cards, whatever it is, but it, stays close to your heart, and it's a really great thing to travel with. The second thing would be my turtle neck wrap, which, now that I think about it, I recently lost it, but I love that thing. It's really small, and then wraps around your neck so that your head isn't bobbing around when you're trying to sleep on the plane. And then my third one would be my Aloha bags. So Aloha Collection creates these splash-proof, not waterproof, splash-proof bags. And they're perfect because you can roll them up and travel with them. But then they also, because I am notorious for flying drones from boats. I mean, we talked about the yacht, but yachts are big. I'm talking kayaks with huge waves around you, or from speedboats or whatever. And it's a really great product to keep your items dry, whether it's your drone or anything else. So I love Aloha bags because I can pack them into my carry-on and then bring them out, unfold them, and then use them on my day-to-day, whether I'm at the beach, I'm droning, I'm on a boat, or whatever it is. And this last one is a new one I discovered, which is Unbound Merino. So if you're familiar with merino wool, an amazing, amazing type of material to wear when you're traveling. And so it's so lightweight. And it's so funny because when they sent me the products, I was like, is there anything in here? Because it's literally so lightweight. But I've been wearing their clothing, and I'm actually really excited to travel with it. This next one you might be interested in, which is 3 money-saving tactics when I travel. And actually, I have none. Just kidding. I'm not really a budget traveler. I love luxury stuff, but there are a few things that I do to save money. And the first one is around maximizing my travel credit card points and how I use my travel credit cards. So there are some extreme travel hackers out there. So many of my friends do an amazing job with that, but I do some of the basics, and it goes very, very far, where things like my Amex Platinum, which I think is $600 or so per year annual fee. I get that back within the first month of having that card. And at one point I had 2 Amex Platinums, I had the regular one, the everyday user, and then I had the business Amex Platinum. But fantastic. So I do a lot to maximize my points on the travel benefit side. And if you're somebody who doesn't really use travel credit cards, like let me give you a couple examples of what that looks like. There's a perk in there around their Amex Fine hotels where you get $200 in free hotel stay per year. And so I'm making sure I'm using that. And I mean, right there, $200. If you think about the $600 paid, it's like, oh wow, that's an immediate one. Or here's another one. There's an Uber credit of $15 per month more in the month of December. Like that is already a huge savings over the year. And I'm making sure, because that amount expires at the end of each month, I'm making sure I'm using my Uber credit, whether for cars or for Uber Eats. I'm making sure I'm using that every month. So those are two super quick examples. This next one is around flights. And I'm realizing as I speak to more people, not enough people use Google Flights. And it's such a powerful tool. The number one thing is, if you can, be flexible on the day in which you fly out, because you can save huge amounts of money. And so I love putting my flight into Google Flights and then looking at it on calendar view, where you can look at all the prices on each of the days and then choose the day to fly out that costs the least amount. And let me give you an example, because literally just last night, I've decided to spend the entire month of August in the Bahamas. And so I booked a flight, and the difference between flying on a Monday, $300 one way for a 1 hour flight, was totally different than flying on a Tuesday, $49 for a direct flight one way. Huge difference. And so I instead chose to fly on the Tuesday instead of the Monday. And then the other thing is that within Google Flights, it has an area in there that tells you whether the price that you're looking at is typical, is high, or is low for what it normally is. Because a lot of times, like you might be like, oh wow, $49, that's an amazing deal versus $300. But is that an awful deal versus, I don't know, what the normal flight is? $49 is a good deal. But it's helping to tell you if it's a typical price or not, because then I might be like, oh, never mind. I'm not gonna go to the Bahamas for August. I'm gonna go to, I don't know, Costa Rica, for example, because flights are typically lower than normal. So it's helping me make a decision on places. So I love using Google Flights. Ooh, and this third one is kind of a combo of the first two I told you about. So I stay loyal to Hilton. Oh, I love being a Diamond Hilton member. It's awesome in terms of perks. But in the same way with Google Flights that you can flip it into a calendar view, you can do the same thing for Hilton, where you can look at it on a calendar view and you can choose which day you're going to stay at a Hilton property, because one day might be wildly cheaper than another. And the other thing, I use my Amex Platinum because like 2 or 3 times a year, you can trade your points over to Hilton points with a bonus multiplier on there. So I think instead of being like one normal Amex point being 2 Hilton points, it's like one Amex point is now like 2.5 Hilton points. So you can get additional points. And a lot of times, the number of points you will use on Hilton can fluctuate, just like the prices I talked to you about in that calendar view. And so it's helping me to stay at really nice Hilton properties for a fraction of the normal amount. Let me try to give a specific example. One of the hotels I love to stay at, the Hilton in Playa del Carmen, which I have a full video on that, link in the show notes. I think I paid something around $175 a night on a hotel room that would normally cost you $400. And so that's a fantastic savings, because that's an all-inclusive resort that is very, very beautiful and right on the beach. I love this next question, which is 3 ways to have fun while traveling. Biased, my number one is definitely flying drones, because you can explore and see so much. The example I love to give is I found the humongous black tip shark migration in Jupiter, Florida, and it was just a few hundred yards off of the shore, but you would never see these hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of sharks unless you had a drone. And so these sharks, they will migrate down the coast of Florida like January, February timeframe every single year. And I went out every single day with my drone to try to find them. And there's no way you would find them without the drone. I guess if you had a helicopter or an airplane, but cheaper with a drone. The second way I like to have fun, I have fun everywhere I go, but I genuinely love dancing and going to nightclubs and going out. I love to party with or without alcohol, to be honest. Like a lot of times I'll just go completely sober and just dance my face off. I mean, I love music. I date a DJ, but I love going out. And actually one of the ways I spent my New Year's going back to traveling alone is I went to Madrid. I was always so curious about traveling Spain, and a piece of my heart is definitely in Madrid, but I went out on New Year's alone and just had the time of my life. And you're probably asking the question, how do you stay safe while traveling alone and going out, right? I would say, so I have a full video about a lot of solo female travel safety tips. I'll link that in the description below, in the show notes below. One tip, anytime I call an Uber, when I'm out partying by myself, I will call that Uber when I am in the women's restroom, in a stall with the door closed. And you're like, oh my gosh, why do you have to be so secret about it? One, I don't want anyone to know that I'm about to leave because I don't want anyone to follow me out. Two, I don't want anyone to see the location of where I'm going to next. I don't want someone accidentally at the bar looking over my shoulder, noticing that Christine is going to this or that hotel. I just don't want people to know. And I will just wait in the women's restroom in the stall until it's my Uber is there. And then I will literally beeline outside and go straight into the car. And so I Irish exit super hard when it's time to leave from the nightclub. And the last way I always have fun, and I've written about this and talked about this before, especially on my Venice, Italy trip, where I was spent several days just traveling around alone before my family came out there and met me, is I always schedule in time for being wanderlost. In other words, no agenda, nothing in mind, and I will just walk for a long time and just see what I discover. And it's one of my favorite ways, headphones, no headphones at all, just being super in tune with the place that you're at and just following your intuition of like, oh, that looks interesting down there. Like, let's go check that out. Or looking at the street art, or popping into a random, I don't know, wine bar or whatever it is, but just always bundling in time in every trip I have to just get totally immersed and lost in the place I'm at and let adventure find me. Which leads to this next question that's being asked, which is 8 words or less, your travel mantra. And for me, it's let adventure find you. Too often we will overschedule our trips. And to be honest, so much of the reason why I travel as freely and as spontaneously as I do now is because when I was growing up, all I wanted to do was explore and like just find things and like wander off. And my parents love strict, scheduled itineraries. There was no room to find adventure, and it was just such a packed schedule of running around from thing to thing to thing that if there was something waiting for you that you could, I don't know, randomly find and discover, there ain't no time for that. And so let adventure find you is a really big part of the way I travel now as an adult. Let me give you an example of what that looks like. So I used to travel to New York City. This was before I moved there and lived there. And I would travel to New York and I would go there and just book a hotel, and that's it. No plans at all. And I would just step out into the streets and the buzz of the energy and just see what was going to find me on that trip. Some of those most wild experiences of my life have happened on those trips because I was just open to whatever might happen. My most memorable souvenir, I'm somebody who does not buy things. I own very, very little, more now that I've been getting a lot of drones. But I would say my souvenirs, to be honest, are my scars. And here's something I'm totally admitting. I used to spend time editing my photos and editing all the scars off of my legs. So when I travel, like I'm an adventurer. When I'm bike riding, like I'm out there riding a bike. I love to jump off of things. I was in Key West jumping off bridges. I love rope swings. I love like all kinds of stuff. I love climbing into places I'm not supposed to. I was recently randomly in Kansas climbing on something I wasn't supposed to. I totally fell off of that thing because I didn't realize there was no handle to get down. Anyway, I smashed my hand. It was not broken, but hurt. I literally just healed a couple days ago. I just recently started working out again. But my scars are just, there's a memory behind each one about some kind of adventure or trouble I got into. And now I don't edit that out. Who cares? I don't care about that anymore. I used to care. Now I'm just like, whatevs. My favorite cheap eat, tacos. Tacos in San Diego. Nothing beats the tacos in San Diego besides the tacos in Mexico, obviously. But cheap tacos in San Diego are my favorite. And I would say secondary to that would be dollar pad thai in Thailand. Amazing. A recent discovery, maybe that I actually enjoy cruise travel. I didn't think I liked cruises, but now I'm starting to kind of embrace and enjoy that. So I would say Virgin Voyages has been a new and different cruising experience. I talk about that a lot on my channel. I also recently discovered the Gulf Coast, and Charles helped me with a lot of advice over time. I've been super inspired by things he's posted and written about. And I was so wowed by the views on the Gulf Coast. I've always been curious about that part of Florida. I am fortunate to have met while traveling. Ooh, I got a lot of answers. I'll talk about a recent one and then a non-recent one. So this was my year of travel conferences. I was like, I'm gonna try going to travel conferences. A lot of people don't know. I only became a creator right before 2020, which is a fantastic time to be a travel creator. I'm totally joking. Talking travel when no one's traveling is very difficult, yet I've been able, I think I just hit 21,000 on my travel channel, so boom, stoked on that. But I signed up in 2020 for every single travel conference. Obviously, we know it happened that year, and so this was my year. And I have been to Kelly Lewis and Women's Travel Fest. I went to Wander Fest in New Orleans. I went to Women in Travel Summit, WITS in Kansas City. I went to TBEX, Travel Bloggers Exchange in Tri-Cities, Washington. I went to TravelCon in Memphis. I went to World Domination Summit in Portland, Oregon. And I'm supposed to go to Vid Summit in LA coming up. This list is really long. It literally has been my year. And to be honest, I think I'm missing one or two. But anyway, I got to meet so many creators and so many people who've been watching my content. And it was an amazing thing to be able to put the faces and the people to the handles that you see on social media. So that was fantastic. But I'm super fortunate to have met two travelers that I really admire. One, Erica Hackman, now Vervo, a fantastic woman. Actually, she gave me this necklace that I'm wearing right now. I got to meet her at World Domination Summit and TravelCon. And Travis Sherry, if you haven't checked out his podcast, check it out. Extra Pack of Peanuts. He's a part of Location Indie. He's fantastic, really great energy, really awesome human being in general. But I got to hang out with him at TravelCon and World Domination Summit. And my most favorite person I met while traveling, I met Meatball. I met my boyfriend while traveling. We were both at a silent disco headphones party together, in which at the end of the night, I took his headphones off, demanded that he sit down and tell me why he knew every single hip hop song that I loved. And that's how I met him. Ooh, and lastly, while traveling, George St. Pierre. I love UFC, Ultimate Fighting Championship. I grew up with a father that wanted sons, and I was a fighter for a long time. But I love UFC, and he's one of my favorite fighters, and I got to meet him in Vegas, and he's awesome. And who would I like to meet? Charles McCool, the one who is putting on this interview for me on his website. So make sure you check that out, as well as his entire website. Info in the description below. And he's somebody who has made me crack up with mostly, I guess, his Twitter posts over these last few years, but he's an awesome creator. I'm going to throw in an additional question, which is most recent badass travel memory. And while it's tempting to say dressing up as a dinosaur and breaking a world record at World Domination Summit, which I will talk about on this podcast, I would say it's the choice I'm making right now. And I referenced how I just bought a flight to go to the Bahamas for an entire month. And one of the things recently is I realized and have admitted openly to the world that I completely burned out. I burned out from traveling. I was traveling way too much. And one of the things I realized is if I'm going to travel again, I need to go to my happy place. And my happy place is the ocean. And one of the things for me in trying out all these different travel conferences is, I named them off: Portland, Memphis, Kansas City. Like, this is not beach travel. This is not the ocean. If anything, I'm really far from the ocean. And I'm, droning things like the Brown River in New Orleans. Wow, that really was the color of poo. And so I realized to get out of my burnout, because if you've never burned out, burnout isn't just about needing sleep and rest. It's about trying to find my creativity again, because with burnout, that goes away. And it's not something that sleep will help you to get back. And so traveling to my happy place and spending some quiet time at the ocean is exactly what I'm going to do for the month of August in the Bahamas. And that, to me, is a really badass decision. If you enjoyed this podcast episode, please leave a positive review. It really does help to distribute this podcast to more people and would mean a lot to me. I'm Christine Lozada. I'm your host. This is Everyday Badassery. And don't forget, there's a free journal that you can download and journal along with me in this podcast. And in the meantime, go forth, be badass, and I'll see ya in the next adventure. Ciao.